Thank you, Rabbi Feigenbaum, and thank you, Andrea, for being our first guest in our new series, a podcast series. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us. I know we're competing with a lot of things going on, specifically Netflix and other different streaming things. So thank you for taking the time to come on and listen to our conversation. So that's really it. It's really just a conversation with some different people, and we want to. Our objective is, we know that everybody in life has a journey. We're all going through the journey. The Baal Shem Tov, the Hasidic master and founder, he says that we all go through different stops in life. It's almost like a bus stop, and we go through nursery, and then pre-K, and then we go through grade school, middle school, high school. We skip a couple of steps, and then you end up in River Garden. And everyone goes through their own life journey, and everyone here has their own interesting journey and experiences, and it's an opportunity to sometimes hear from somebody else about their life story and about their journey, and learn some of the profound influences in their lives that we can learn from, or some of the teachings that they were fortunate to take a part of. So we're extremely honored to feature for our first guest, Andrea Mail, who's a local Jacksonville resident, living here for, I believe, 16 years or so, 17 years now, and it's nice to see her lovely family joining us. Hi, Steve, and the girls, and it's really an honor to have Andrea join us. Andrea, even though living in Jacksonville for the last 17 years but has lived in many different cities all over the world, both on 3 different continents, originally from Texas, and was in Israel for a little bit, also lived in the UK for many years, and also I learned recently was spent her time after she got married to Stephen in Paris. So this journey has resulted in many different experiences, and our goal tonight is to just listen to some of those experiences and anything that you feel we can learn from those experiences, and just have a conversation. It's not an interview, it's just more of a conversation, and we look forward to hearing about Andrea's journey. But just before I start, if anybody has any questions, we're going to have some time at the end to ask questions. I would ask you if you can just post them in the chat box, and then I'll read the questions just to keep the structure a little more flowing properly. So I just want to start off again by saying good evening to you, Andrea, and thank you for taking the time to come. We appreciate your time, and we know that you have, as I said, lived in many different cities, met many different people along the way. You've lived in different parts of the world, and we're just here to learn a little bit from your life experiences, and just hear some of the influences and some of the events that shaped your life and shaped your, philosophies or things that, or your values. So I just want to say thank you for joining us tonight.
Rabbi, thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to start off by saying, like I said, you've lived in many different cities around the world and many different continents. But my understanding is that you grew up in Texas, in a small town. You want to just tell us a little about your upbringing, a little bit your parents, and just before we move on to other areas.
Sure. First of all, it's just so heartwarming to see each of you on the screen. And as much as it's hard not being together in person, this is so much fun. So thanks to each of you for taking time out of your busy lives. And of course to Rabbi Feigenbaum for organizing, and Rabbi Fish for doing a wonderful new podcast series that I look forward to learning from the other people. I'm used to being a facilitator, so this is new for me. Thank you for getting me out of my comfort zone, and I'll do my best to share. So I'm originally from Irving, Texas, which is outside of Dallas. And we were one of the only Jewish families living in Irving, and especially probably one of the only openly Jewish. My father helped start a hospital. My dad, Louis, of blessed memory, was a cardiologist. And Mom Carol, who grew up in Dallas, they were really just loved living in a smaller city, and always were teaching people about Judaism, even though they didn't have a formal Jewish education. But they wanted my brother and me to, be part of the Dallas Jewish community. We had the traditional rites of passage, bat mitzvah, went on an Israel trip. But perhaps like some others of you, when you're one of the only people in your school, and I think my brother and I were the only Jewish people who would celebrate holidays, it's not always easy being different. And I wanted to fit in. And so didn't really talk that much about being Jewish with my Christian friends. On the positive though, I have, so many close friends from growing up there. They were very accepting. And it's part of realizing it's so important to be comfortable with who we are. And my parents were always the model of mensches. My dad as a doctor was humble and hardworking, beloved by his patients. My mom, Carol, worked for the community colleges and always brought people of different backgrounds over. And they really set the tone of respecting each and every person you meet and looking for the best qualities in everyone. And when you have that lens in life, it's a blessing. And what I didn't learn until later, it's a Jewish value, the having a good eye. I think, is it hakarat hatov? Is that the correct expression? And as I look at all of you, I feel it from my soul to yours. So they also gave me the confidence to be independent. And when I was accepted to college at Harvard, they made sure I could, afford to go, and had an incredible experience. In fact, I see one of my college roommates is on the line, and I know another one was hoping to join. So to have met amazing people there. But interestingly, when I got to Harvard, I went to the Harvard Hillel, and everyone was welcoming. There was a big bagel brunch, but I didn't feel that comfortable there either, because I wasn't that Jewishly involved and Jewishly literate, as one would say. So I ended up not being that involved Jewishly on campus, but made friends of every background, and they're still close friends, to this day. So that's just kind of a little bit of how I went from being a third generation Texan on my mom's side. My dad was from an immigrant background, and still have family and love my Texan roots. If anything, Jacksonville has the warmth that I associate with Texas.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to kind of, pivot to just a different point. Along your journey, I understand that you lived in London for how many years, Andrea?
12 years, thanks to Stephen, my Scottish husband.
Scottish husband. And good to see you again, Stephen. But I just wanted to bring up a specific question, because the Jewish world now, we're in mourning. I would say the entire Klal Yisrael is in mourning of the passing of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who was also a Lord, was really a unique gift to our generation. He was the most articulate spokesman for Judaism in circles far beyond the Jewish community. Just yesterday was his Shloshim, his 30-day commemoration of his death, and didn't get a chance yet to watch the broadcast. I'm told it was recorded, but the lineup was anywhere from the Archbishop of Canterbury to Prince Charles to the President of Israel, the Chief Rabbi of Israel, and many others. And I just wanted to hear from you, Andrea, because my understanding is that you had some personal interaction with him in your time in London. If you can just tell us a little bit about those experiences and some of perhaps his influence on you or in your circles, we would love to hear about that.
Thank you, Rabbi. And it was such a loss, to the Jewish world and the world at large. He is someone who left such an incredible legacy with his books and everything from his podcast and TED Talks and sermons. So very grateful for that. I did have the honor, privilege of working with him through my work for Hebrew University while living in London. Stephen's brother worked very closely with Rabbi Sachs for a number of years, I believe 3 or 4, with Rabbi Sachs's initiative called Jewish Continuity to help ensure the future, a vibrant future for the Jewish people. And Rabbi Sachs was someone who was extraordinary in his ability to synthesize from academic wisdom to Jewish wisdom and to reach people. And I think because he genuinely cared and was so humble in his gifts, people just loved being around him. And he was always very modest. I know from his book called Celebrating Life, he had articles from the Times of London and mentions when he met his wife, she was the one that was more outgoing. He was more, kind of quiet, reserved. But after he had a calling to get the message out that Judaism and Jewish wisdom has such relevance for all of us, Jewish and non-Jewish people, and especially in these divided times. He really talked about the concern regarding hyper-individualism. If we're so worried about ourselves, then we're not going to ultimately be happy in a meaningful way, in a fulfilled way. So as I look at all of you who are all people who contribute to community and always offering to give to others, I think he would be very deeply moved that how many people were impacted by him, and grateful for that blessing.
One of the things that was striking about Rabbi Sachs was his ability, as I mentioned, to connect to a much wider audience than the Jewish community, let alone the Orthodox community. My understanding was that he gave regular broadcasts on the BBC. He was very close to Prince Charles. In fact, Prince Charles spoke at his retirement, not only his dinner. I recall Prince Charles saying at his retirement dinner that he's the same age as Rabbi Sachs. They're both 72. Rabbi Sachs just passed away. And he was remarking about a couple of years ago that Rabbi Sachs is going to retirement where his career has not yet begun even. That was Prince Charles. So I'm just kind of curious. I mean, because you're in a few worlds as well. You're in the Jewish community and you're in the wider community as well. What do you think are great values or qualities to learn from Rabbi Sachs, staying true to our Judaism, our values, but yet be an effective spokesperson in the wider society?
Great question. I think Rabbi Sachs always focused on listening to really hear others and not to be so focused on our own importance. I remember many events, it was one of the fun parts of living in London was helping organize events at places like the Royal Academy and Hampton Court Palace. One, we even took everyone to the Palace of Versailles, these kosher banquets and these, very glamorous royal palaces and places. And Rabbi Sachs would attend, and he always was kind and great listener. I mean, Rabbi Fish, to your credit, reminds me of you. I was a little nervous when, doing a podcast with you, because I'm like, Rabbi Fish always, is the one who's listening, and I don't want to be talking too much. So anyway, thank you for also drawing people out and asking the right questions. And I think when you're authentic in your approach to others, and when you're proud of who you are and share the values that really unite us all, which is something Rabbi Sachs always, had a gift for doing, it draws people to you. And I think he, with his books about how we heal a fractured world, these books that were relevant to the wider society. I remember when he was invited in 2017 to speak on the TED main stage in Vancouver, and being, wow, this is a Jewish person who's from a traditional background being recognized as one of the greatest intellects in the world today. So,
Yeah. So, thank you for sharing that. And that's, I think, such a important message for all of us, because many times we feel that there's a choice in front of us, and I would categorize this as a false choice, that we have to either embrace our tradition, our Judaism, or we have to embrace our modernity and Western values. And in our times, and I think Rabbi Sachs was a great spokesperson for that. And I think that you have great qualities in that area as well. That's why I just wanted to hear your thoughts. So thank you for sharing that. If it's okay, just to pivot to a different aspect of your life. For the last several years, you've been very involved in the organization called Momentum, originally JWRP. I think it was about 7-8 years or so, originally just as a trip participant, and somehow, ended up president of the organization, now even a more prestigious title, past president. I've known many presidents that aspire to be past presidents. Not all are successful, so yasher koach to you on that. But if you can just give us a little bit, reflect a little bit about your experiences to Momentum, what drew you in, what you feel 7 or 8 years later you got from your involvement in the organization.
So it's beautiful having your wife, Henny, somewhere with us this evening. Momentum, which was an organization I first heard about from Rabbi Fish's wife, Henny, and she invited me to join her. And I see Emily, Cindy, other of our friends who are with us tonight who went on that trip. And it talks about fostering unity without uniformity. And to me, that's a message that resonates. I'm someone who I'm concerned about how we can label people and how divisive that can be. It's each of us is unique in our own way. Each of us has sacred talents and gifts to help make the world a better place. And when we can come together, find the commonalities, everyone is more effective working together and supporting each other. I'm a big believer. Part of the reason I even mentioned cheerleading back in Texas when you were asking me about my background is it wasn't because I was, so great at doing gymnastics. If anything, I was far from talented in that area. But I did love cheering people on and supporting people. And I think it's one of the most important things we can do, whether in our own families and with our friends, and then of course, community, country, et cetera, and of course with our faith community as well. And Henny, who comes from a different background, I was so awed by her and our other friends' commitment to Jewish observance, and having grown up without the traditions of Judaism, such as keeping kosher and strictly observing Sabbath, Shabbat. And I'm trying to use words, my college roommate Terrence here, who's from a lovely Catholic family. And at first I was nervous being around people that were more observant and practiced Judaism differently. But I realized, why is it I can have friends of Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim backgrounds and be uncomfortable around people of my own background just because they have the different way of practicing? And then I was also awed by the beauty of the tradition, seeing it celebrated by people like Henny and others of you with us tonight, because the emphasis was doing good. It was making a difference. It was not worrying about the ego. It was about really helping and serving. So it made me think, wow, if I can support and bring people together of different backgrounds, because I have friends, I have friends who are Reform rabbis that are women and conservative and Reconstructionist, and let's just come together and learn and find the wisdom of this ancient tradition that can help us in what is an increasingly challenging time. It's a beautiful time. We have so many opportunities to connect like we are tonight. And yet many of us realize the complications of a world that's so technology driven that it can keep us from connecting more personally, and also lose sight of what really matters, which is, less about the self and more about giving. And there was a great phrase, being selfless isn't thinking less of oneself, it's thinking of yourself less. So I look at each of you and you inspire me on that level. So momentum,
Yeah,
long story short, has inspired me to just work on being a better person, modeling it for my children. And I think they realize when you stop talking and just start doing more, that it has a very positive impact on the family. At least I hope so. Girls, you can unmute yourselves if you want.
Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. And I really, just want to focus on some of the words that you said, because I think they're very compelling and powerful. You said that momentum is about unity without uniformity. I think many times we're a little reluctant to show signs of unity because we feel like we are giving up on our identity or on our values. But when you say unity without uniformity, we are able to have those common bonds and build those bridges, but yet stay true to whatever we believe. So I think that's very refreshing. Tell us a little bit about, I know you in your capacity, different capacities over the years with Momentum, had the opportunity to influence many women to go to Israel for the first time. Can you just share with us just a little bit, maybe even from the leadership perspective, about the excitement that you were able to observe with the women going to Israel, and how I know that you're passionate about Israel and Zionism, what that did for you in terms of as a Jew, helping other people have that opportunity and that dream.
Sure. So first of all, I think it's always a gift to for many of us who most of life, if not all of us, we have a certain routine and discipline to day-to-day living. And some of that is, beautiful, wonderful. And of course it's how we view it. And then also at times, it's like when you're raising young children, it can be exhausting and work and all the responsibilities. So the gift of taking young mothers, and now we take fathers to Israel, we call it a spa for the soul, to really focus on the internal work and growth of what is my purpose here in life, and how can I be more effective as a parent, a colleague, wife, mother, daughter. Many of us are in, that sandwich era where we're looking after our parents as they get older, honoring our parents, and also wanting to look after our children and families. So it's incredible that programs like Birthright kind of set a new example, and then they took young people to Israel, and then our program taking mothers to Israel. We've taken, over 20,000 mothers from over 30 countries at this point. The organization's been going for 10 years. But the main thing is for the women to bond with each other, to be out of, away from home, out of their comfort zone, and to realize, many of them, that Israel is different than what they see on the news. It's a very vibrant country. It's a democracy like ours, with all the challenges that democracy can have. I always say, when we like, well, that person thinks differently on whether it's politics or religion. I'm thinking we can't even decide on an ice cream flavor sometime in our own family. So why do we expect everyone to think the same way? We're all going to be different on whatever issue it is. And it's important to be able to listen and learn from each other, and not to, if anything, Momentum talks about judge to the good, always have positive intent. And it really is a fascinating example. I remember once, after hearing that, I was at the grocery store. I was impatient. I needed to get the girls. The person in front of me was taking a long time. And that feeling, well, some of you may not, but like, what's going on? Should I say something? And I thought, no, I'll be patient. And the person turned around, had tears in their eyes, and had just had a call that someone in their family was very ill. And I was like, thank goodness, instead of thinking just of myself, I took the time, which is a Jewish way of thinking, and not only Judaism, but I'm just using that as an example because it comes from our religion, but really religion should be to think about others, to not just put ourselves first. And so I think that when people are away from home, and I would love even Momentum as a model for friends who are from Christian backgrounds or, non-religious backgrounds, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, to go and have this bonding time in a meaningful, purposeful way. And you come back refreshed and give more. The family always said when I would come home, I'd be glowing and excited, and that kind of soul deep learning, soul nourishing learning spreads. And if we all, with Hanukkah coming in a couple of days, if we each think of ourselves as a candle, and if we share our light, that supports others to share their light or to reciprocate when we're feeling exhausted, especially during these COVID difficult times. So that's kind of the message of let's always find ways.
That's great. Let me just ask a follow-up to that, because I think just looking around many of the participants, I just know many of us have been to Israel. Thankfully, it's a gift in our generation. Our 3 generations ago, 4 generations ago, if our grandparents were talking to each other, this was just a pipe dream. But, many of us come back from Israel all inspired. We feel like, we've just had our souls have been recharged. And then we just come back to mundane life here in Jacksonville. Nothing against Jacksonville, but we come back to mundane life. And you've done this trip so many times, and you've seen so many women make the trip and influenced so many women make the trip. What would be what would be some guidance in terms of what you can share in terms of how to keep that spark alive, that inspiration still active?
It's interesting, Rabbi. One of the concepts I learned from Momentum is the word spiritual is spirit plus ritual. And growing up without as much ritual in my life, and as someone who loves trying different things, I used to look at the ritual side as more constrictive. And what I've learned about both religion and life in general, when we have, and this is something I think also is part of positive psychology, and I always think of Momentum as almost looking at positive psychology combined with the Jewish lens and wisdom. And when we have disciplined, healthy habits, the tough times, we know what to do to get ourselves getting out of it. So, for example, I think of all the ways that in our community, even looking in our Jewish magazine, but also I've been involved with our local PBS affiliate, the amount of people doing community service. No matter what tough time we're going through, someone else can need our help, whether it's a listening ear, whether it's supporting them, picking up meals. We're able to see my mom when she comes over to keep her from feeling so isolated. Each of us is dealing with different challenges. So I feel like what's helped me with Jewish ritual is recognizing that Shabbat, which used to seem as, oh my gosh, you're not supposed to be on technology and there's all these rules, that actually it gives a beautiful rhythm of life. And when my father, of blessed memory, passed away, knowing that there were traditions in place to help us get through day to day was very supportive and affirming, because at times when we're overwhelmed, it's hard to make those choices. So it's nice to have a foundation to rely upon. And as I look at the amazing people, each of you, y'all are the ones when there's difficult times, I think of you and I think, okay, my friend Taryn just flew out to California to be with a friend who doesn't have that long to live. And even though because of COVID, she couldn't be in the same, home, found a place to stay so she could visit Alexa and take care of her. So these are the things that remind me that, each of us can help, and we're often capable of so much more than we realize. So I encourage each of you, if I'm ever not giving you what you need, please text, call, FaceTime me, because I do believe in each of you and will always want to help support you the same way I've been supported.
Yeah, that's a great, a great reflection. And thank you, Taryn. Nice to meet you on that great mitzvah, that great good deed. I just want to ask you more of a general question, Andrea, because you've been involved not only with Momentum, but with many organizations, Jewish and general alike, in the capacity of a volunteer. just a couple angles on that. If you can just give us some guidance, why one should be motivated to devote their time and energy. Because there's a price to pay. We give up our time, we give up some of our family involvement, we give up some of our energy, and maybe if you can just also share with us perhaps some pitfalls, to avoid maybe burnout as a volunteer, just based on some of your experiences, if you can just share some of that with us.
Sure. I think of the beautiful Jewish phrase, if I'm not for myself, who am I? So it first starts with making sure we are taking care of ourselves to stay mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually healthy. Then if I'm only for myself, what am I? So if we're only worrying about ourselves in the material, physical world and not working on the deeper, spiritual and emotional connections with people, then it's unfortunate, because there's so much more when we're giving and connecting that elevates life and sanctifies it. And that's something Judaism really focuses on. Even in Jewish prayers, I was fascinated only recently, really understanding we pray in the plural. We can say individual prayers, but when we come together, it's a collective we, wanting peace for the world, focusing. And even the concept, when I think of Shalom Bayit, which is peace in the home, peace also means completion. So it's not just saying everyone has to get along all the time, but everyone to be your best self and self-actualize. So when that transcends to volunteerism, it's recognizing each of us has different gifts and talents. I have our youngest who is doing homework right now, but she's the one who is a great chef and has challenged me to be better in the kitchen. And it's something that I'm awed by her. And I understand now as I look back, no wonder she would get frustrated. She's so good at this and I'm not, but I've learned from her, I've gotten better. But if someone said, come help me cook a, big meal for the Hanukkah party, I'd be like, but if you need me to welcome people or to call people to come, count me in. And of course, we sometimes have to do the jobs we may not enjoy as much, but ideally as volunteers, if you find something that energizes you and you work with people that balance your strengths and interests, and then you also really do make sure it's a healthy balance for your own recharge time, for family time. I mean, Rabbi, I think of you and Rabbi Feigenbaum and other communal leaders that it can be very difficult to balance it all. So y'all model how to do it extremely well. And part of it is a calling. When we're only thinking of ourselves, we really are not going to maximize the time we have. And we don't know how long we have on this earth. We've had friends who passed away very suddenly or way too early. And just to think, gosh, this whole concept of David Brooks talks about resume virtues versus eulogy virtues. And when people pass, we don't say, oh, they had the best ACT score and their house was always tidy. No, those, we talk about the impact they made on people's lives, kindness, compassion, sense of humor, generosity. So really being intentional about values and how that translates into volunteerism. I've realized for sometimes that if I'm not really able to add value to a volunteer organization, then it's better to let someone else step in, because for me, it's not doing it for a title, for a name in a certain place or the recognition. Even with momentum, it shows you how things can happen. I wasn't seeking to take more responsibility, but for whatever reasons, it was meant to be. And I wanted to serve and support my friends. And it was very meaningful, but I focused on leading through the values I had learned, which is gratitude, generosity, unity, human dignity, not letting if I'm the president, I should be able to, realizing that, what, ego does not have a place at the board table or at the organization table. We're here for something much more important, and let's work together and solve the issues that arise.
Very well said. Yeah, thank you. I just want to, pivot to, you have so many different interesting people and experiences along your journey. One very well-known, famous person that you went to Harvard with, I understand, is Sheryl Sandberg of the CEO of Facebook. And she's, besides her position at Facebook, she became very popular with the book Lean In. And more recently, after her husband tragically passed away, she wrote a very powerful book called Plan B, book on resiliency. So if you can just share with us a little bit about your relationship with her, how you got to know her, and just we're just curious to hear a little bit about her and your life.
So Rabbi, I'm actually reminded, seeing your amazing mom's name on the screen, that Sheryl, when she wrote Option B, was after the loss of your beloved father, blessed memory. And Sheryl signed a book for your mom when I was at her book event. And it's something that Henny organized. Your wife said, I don't like to impose. And it's something that is very meaningful to remember. I had forgotten that incident. Sheryl and Taryn was part of the journey. We were seniors. Sheryl was a freshman. And as things happen in life, you meet people. I adopted her as my little sister. I was introduced, thought she was just so bright, interesting. And it's amazing in life when you're older and you're just being kind, for all the right reasons. She remembers it so powerfully. She recently, when I stepped down from Momentum, did a surprise video and really talked about the fact that, she would cry on my shoulder. I was her big sister. And I was so moved because here she is all these years later, that's 30 some odd years ago. And it shows really a testament to her. The girls and I talk a lot about when people compliment you, it actually reflects on them because they're the ones showing appreciation, they're being affirming. And Cheryl's someone who is extremely kind and giving to friends, to family, generous of spirit in every sense of the word. And of course is going through the challenges, this technology has exploded and is a tool. We need to harness it for the good. And I know people like her will figure out how to do that effectively. But she is very proud of her Jewish roots, and her parents are amazing people. I've gotten to know the family, and she and I have been each other's weddings. So it's a meaningful friendship. And because it's authentic, it's lasted for three and a half decades now.
Wow. So along your journey, I understand. Was it after that you got married that you lived in Paris? How long of a time did you live in Paris for?
So Stephen had
give
the
us
best.
a sense of of the French Jewish community, or just your experiences there. It sounds like a fascinating stop along the way.
So it sounds like straight out of the movie. I meet this charming Scotsman while I was living in Israel, in Jerusalem, who has a great pickup line, come visit me in Paris. And I really thought, I'll probably never hear from him. This was before cell phones, Facebook, you had to sit by a payphone. I didn't even have my own telephone back then. And talk about determined. By a few months, I had visited with a chaperone. A girlfriend came with me, visited Paris, ended up getting engaged soon after. And within within a year, we were married. And that was 28 years ago we met. And living in Paris as newlyweds, Stephen was there for a bank he was working for, Societe Generale, had a beautiful apartment near the Eiffel Tower. And we did have wonderful friends. We weren't that involved in the Jewish community because we were newlyweds and just kind of really getting to know each other because we had dated cross-continent for our entire relationship. But we did celebrate holidays with friends there, and also met people of so many interesting backgrounds and have stayed in touch. And the girls have been blessed to get to go and visit Paris. And it's funny, for a girl from Irving, Texas, when I applied to college, I wrote about a book called The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, never thinking I would have the experience to live in Europe. And it is ironic in how life takes you on and I always say I'm a wandering Jew by choice. I've had interesting places to go along the way, including, from going to, overseas to Israel, Paris, and then London. And Paris is magnificent, and we just hope the community there stays strong. I know it's been difficult times, but we just pray and hope, and we will see.
So I just want to ask you about the pattern a little bit. From the time you were in the university or in Boston, then you spent time in Israel, France, many years in the UK, and then somehow you end up in Jacksonville. So Jacksonville doesn't feel like it belongs on the same list of all these famous cosmopolitan centers of the world. What was it about Jacksonville that attracted you and Stephen, to come here and put down your roots as a family? We were just curious to hear your insights on that.
Well, first of all, I do believe wherever you are, you can make it into the place you want it to be. So each place I've lived has been amazing in different ways. People are amazing no matter where in the world you're living. Jacksonville, it's interesting because we had just had 3 children within 3.5 years. And I met my parents here for my cousin Janine Rogozinski's son's bar mitzvah, and felt so welcomed by the community. And everything here was October and sunny and relaxed. And London, not quite so sunny and not quite so relaxed, as magnificent as London is. And the people here felt very wholesome. And funnily enough, Taryn and I have another, and I think Jill, another college roommate's on the call. One of our roommates has a sister-in-law from Jacksonville, Sheila Jacobson's daughter, Erica. And Erica, Patty said, was the most wholesome person she's ever met, and attributes it to being raised in Jacksonville. And it's really what I felt. I just saw this vibrant Jewish community, very small, nurturing, and Hamisha. And that feeling where it's almost an epiphany. It just felt right. And Janine is my cousin, adopted angel, big sister. And her older kids were such proud, confident Jews who, because they come also from a Holocaust survivor family, were very strong in their sense of heritage and commitment to the Jewish people and the Jewish community, but also such proud, as we all are, Americans, and grateful for this incredible country that we live in, and wanted to slow the pace down. In fact, Bruce Horowitz, a friend here, gave me a book called In Praise of Slowness. And it's by Carl Honore, and it really encapsulated why we moved here. There was this sense of, why are we rushing around all the time? In London, working, I couldn't even find a parking place, and I was getting stressed. And I recognized part of that was my own being from Texas and just enjoying a slightly slower environment, especially with young children. But recognizing we were very fortunate, we were able to make the move. And that's not something, any of us can just do, but the timing worked out well. So the main reason also was being closer to family here. My parents loved visiting here. I was closer to them, and my brother and his family, and really all of you. And they say, the grass isn't greener anywhere. The grass is greenest where you water it. So this is where we have, spent our time, raised our family, and hope to be here for a long time, and continue to travel and visit friends and meet new friends along the way in other places.
Wow, that's great. Great to hear that. I just want to, move on just to like a lighter, a fun fact that I learned recently about you, Andrea, that you and your beloved husband, Stephen, were either featured or mentioned on the TV show Friends. You want to just tell us a little bit about how that occurred?
So this takes us back to London. It is a funny story. Another college friend, Michael Borkow, who is a talented Hollywood writer, producer, was filming in London the show Friends. And he said, "Oh, Andrea, Stephen, you're my friends in town. Would you like to come see the show filmed?" And we're like, wow, really? We had started watching it. It was, popular at the time. And it was the part where Emily, who's British, marries Ross, one of the main characters. And so we're watching it being filmed, and Stephen looks at me and he's like, Andrea, they mentioned our names. I'm like, no, no, no. What are you talking about? Watch, let's watch, Jennifer Aniston and look at everybody. But Stephen, of course, is usually right. And Michael is an inside joke, had named the bride's parents. So Emily, the bride, had parents named Andrea and Stephen. They pronounced it Andrea, thinking it sounded more European, played by very funny British actors who were a bit eccentric. I don't know if that was intended as also a joke on us, but it is something that's cute now that our girls are older, have seen the show. It's fun that they enjoy it, and it is a fun fact.
Wow, wow. So it sounds like that's great. That's hilarious. And thank you for sharing that. So, there have been so many different different avenues or stops along the way, as the Baal Shem Tov said. I guess I would just conclude our conversation. I'm happy to field any if anybody has any questions, comments, or feedback. Is your kids on the Zoom as well, so I don't want them to feel uncomfortable or on the spot. But if you just want to just speak to your something about like either your core values or really what motivates you as a person. You spoke about your calling, a person's calling. How would you kind of distill some of that, just so we can get a better appreciation of your journey?
One thing is I look at my daughters, who are a beautiful blend of Stephen's family and mine, both genetically and in every way. I really give credit to my parents and Stephen's parents. So I spoke a little bit about my parents at the beginning, but Stephen's parents are the most amazing people. They are so loving, so giving, have the best values. Nothing is about material belongings. It's all about what they can do for others. You call Stephen's mom and she's always like, Andrea, Stephen, Sabrina, Zoe, Rabbi, makes it sound like she was just waiting for your call, never any guilt. And it's something that who you spend your time with. And as I look at the amazing people on this call, each of us, again, has different qualities. And also one of the things I love about learning, and my mom always encouraged us to read and learn and be open to learning and growth, which is a momentum in Jewish value. And the concept of neuroplasticity. When I grew up, and I think maybe Andrea Hernandez might be on the call, but Andrea taught us at the Jewish Day School here, Martin J. Gottlieb School, shout out, about growth mindset. Not to see challenges as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to learn. And when I think of at times, and especially going back to what you were saying, and during COVID, these challenges are also an opportunity for us to use the time, whether it's reading more, whether it's internal growth, whether it's listening to podcasts or participating in something like this. How do we not get so frustrated and held back by our own, whether it's frustrations or fears, but realize we're capable so much more than we realize. And I think the Jewish people are the growth mindset people, or at least one example of that. The Torah, our biblical stories, are all about challenges, and no one in the Torah is perfect. I mean, the more I learn, I'm like, wow, any challenges we all might have, there's more dysfunctional people that we learn about, from ancient times. And it's really inspiring to think about, and that we can still go back to those stories, whether it's about the sibling rivalry. Right now it's, Joseph and his brothers, and yet Joseph, I think it's the first example in an ancient text where Joseph accepts and gives forgiveness to his brothers who had wanted to, sell him into slavery, even kill him. And he said, no, my destiny, I was meant to end up helping save people in Egypt. So if each of us really think about, wow, what can we do more, each in our little way, every kindness makes the difference. And I think of Lori Palatnik, who started Momentum. And while she talks about women and men changing the world, she starts with the book that she spoke about in Jacksonville years ago about gossip and how words, one word at a time, can make the world better. So how we speak to each other, how we treat each other, every act of kindness. And It's something, that you model, Rabbi, each of you model. And I aspire, again, we're all can aspire to do better with every word, every action, every day, every week, and hopefully soon together in person again.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to kind of wrap up the program. I don't see any questions here. I'm still available if anybody wants to post. I just want to just end on a thought from Rabbi Sachs. And one of the books that he wrote was A Letter and a Scroll. And he talks about that the basic idea of the book, I haven't read it in a while, is that if you take a Torah scroll, it's comprised of thousands and thousands of letters, and every letter is integral to the Torah scroll itself. To the point that if there's one letter that's missing, the entire scroll can become invalid. And he says that that's really the way we have to look at the world. That every single person is a letter in the scroll. And every single person has their own unique purpose and your own unique mission that nobody else can duplicate. And that's part of the goal of this podcast series, is just to learn about the different letters of the scroll that, I'm in the book of Genesis and you're in Leviticus. So we want to take a look at the imprint that you had. So I can't thank you enough for, sharing your time and your experiences and your reflections with us. And I don't want to be too presumptuous, but I think I speak on behalf of everybody that participated, that we find, not only fascinating, but also inspirational. And, may God continue to give you strength and to get through this difficult period with you and through your lovely family, and continue to bless you with wisdom, insight, and leadership, and just continue being a positive force, not only for the Jewish people, but for humanity in general. So I just want to let's give Andrea a round of applause, and really thank you for your time. And I'm going to let Rabbi Feigenbaum conclude the program.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much, Andrea and Rabbi Fish, for a wonderful, as Rabbi Fish said, a conversation. And I really enjoyed it. It was really great to hear about all your different experiences and your wisdom. Rabbi Fish, I do see some questions are coming in, so hopefully we'll have a question and answer in 1 minute. Just a couple of points. Number one, this was recorded, and it will be going on Eitz Chaim YouTube channel and on Facebook. So if you want to share it with other people, please feel free to do that. Number two, I forgot to mention in the beginning, I want to thank Ken Jacob, who has sponsored our new initiative in the winter called Chachma B'Choref, Winter Wisdom, which this program's under that auspices. So thank you, Ken Jacob, for sponsoring this great initiative of our winter programs. So a big shout out to him and Allison. And also, please join us next Monday night at 8 p.m. When we'll be hearing from a major Ben J. Kempner, who was a resident in Jacksonville, and I think it is public knowledge he will be returning again in the summer. But listen to his experience in the Navy, being in Iraq, and many other wonderful things. So please join us next Monday night for that awesome, again, conversation with Rabbi Fish and Ben J. Kempner. So Rabbi Fish, I think there's some questions.
They were all just comments thanking Andrea.
Thank you. There you go.
Okay, I'll just amplify it again. Yasher Koach, and thank you so much.
Okay, so what
early happy Hanukkah to you all.
Happy Hanukkah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to